Hello everybody, this is Starman, and welcome back to Let's Play Betrayal at Krondor. Forgive me if I sound a little congested. I'm currently fighting through a cold as I record this, but I'm not sounding off my game enough. I think it's going to disrupt this too much. So last time, you remember, Tamney the Minstrel said that he would not head back to North Warden until he found him a pattern stone. So we have come here to do just that, and despite what I said last time, I have not headed back to North Warden to sell off all these weapons yet, because I wanted to get to this part first. Because this is a relatively small dungeon, if memory serves. And unfortunately, Patras stumbled. But I'm not going to waste a spell on these guys, even though ogres are a little tougher than your standard enemy, because there's just two of them. Okay, I didn't see what was there, but let's see if... And this time we managed to surprise them. And I forgot that blue guy's an ogre mage, so Locklear is now out of the fight. But thankfully, they ignored Patras, so... and a moredhel chest, which means we will have to probably drop Patras to the breaking point casting this. Neck but no head, arms but no hands, waist but no legs. Well, I'm thinking a guitar, but... Well, I was thinking mallet, but that doesn't, Let's see, arms but no hands, waist but no legs. A machete. Oh. I was thinking bottle, but that's not it either. Okay, let's come back to this one. Okay, now this one I do know. Carpenter left some wood, will not take it back. I saw some dust where he left it, but couldn't find his stack. That'd be sawdust. And here we have an emerald and the geomancy stones. I'm going to have to ditch something to get rid of these, though. And we'll drop the poison in here because we're not going to need that anymore. And we'll just forget about that treasure chest because honestly, we don't need any more treasure right now anyway. And that, thankfully, is the last we'll need rope for this group. So we'll go ahead and head back to Tamney. And it's clearly getting to nightfall because our ring is now glowing. But we'll go ahead and bother him and then get a good night's rest, or probably 3 nights' rest, because Patras is still wounded. Did you go to the diviner's halls? Did you bring back a pattern stone? Don't get yourself into a tiz, Tamney. We got your silly rocks. Now you walking back to Northward, or are we dragging ya? I'll walk back myself after I've studied the rock. Tell Baron Gabbeth I will be there soon. I think he'll be more relieved than you might imagine. Oh, and why is that? Before I was off from the castle, I had it in mind that I wasn't to leave until I at least made some provisions that I could survive. Even assuming that I slipped out of the castle without notice, there was still the issue of how I'd pay my way until I reached a safe haven. So after a bit of investigation, I found the treasury. It was being guarded by a fellow by the name of Corby, a fellow whose tryst with a certain girl by the name of Thea I've had the vicarious pleasure of orchestrating over the past few months. Once I had convinced him that she was awaiting him, it was a simple matter of slipping inside and grabbing up a pouch. Not as if the Baron's missed a few golden sovereigns. I think he's involved with other things at the moment. Exactly as I was thinking, but it seems that what I picked up in the dark was worth more than a few dozen sovereigns. Several hundreds more. Once I realized what I'd done, I became terrified of going back. I could see why, but the Baron told us to come and get you. He made no mention of missing money. It's entirely possible that no one has noticed the missing funds as yet. You could take them back to him. I can't. Even if I return them, the Baron will be aware that Corby left his post open for me to plunder. Though I can't say I behaved like much of a friend to him, I don't wish to betray him twice with the same crime. Actually, I have something of an admission to make. He's the reason why I asked you to retrieve the geomancy stones for me. They aren't worth much even to a gem stealer, but they can be used to make an attractive stone for a wedding band. For Corby, of course. So you've been considering returning all this time, but you wanted to wait until you could cover all the possibilities. All but one. I was wondering if you would take the pouch of diamonds and hold on to it for until after the battle is over. This way no one gets hurt. We can all do what we need to do. Tell them you took it off a dead nighthawk or something. When you go back to the castle, it's a possibility they will search you since your behavior has been a little odd. I'll take the diamonds, but I'll worry about how I will tell them later. My only concern is that you return immediately. We have other things we need to be doing for Duke Martin. Done. I'll see you all back at the castle. Don't be too happy about this, Tamney. You and I have a big score to settle on later. Don't get yourself killed getting back there. Well, unlikely, as we've killed all the enemies, and yes, we can't actually carry all of this with us, so we will go ahead and ditch one of those to get one of those. And we will go ahead and sleep here for a couple of days. And because I'd rather not take the chance of the North Warden shop getting suspicious about a bunch of diamonds being sold there, and since I want to get a few more magic items anyway, oh yeah, he won't take the Dragon Stone. And now we don't really need to go selling these swords except to clear our inventory because we are rich. But while we're here, I am going to stockpile a few more magic items for Patras. And get him some more restoratives. Alright, and that should still give us gold enough for what we need to spend the money that we get from selling the diamonds, because, well, of course they don't just throw a bunch of money at you unless they need you to use it for something else. And what else are we going to need to use it for, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. But first, we have to find Duke Martin again. Things are not going well at all. I've started to get reports from some of our scouts that from the sound of things this will not be an easy siege. So what's brought you looking for me? Well, goblins. I'm beginning to get wistful for the days when we were running the billets in Krondor for Master de Lacy. I haven't had this much exercise in a long time. So where are these goblins you told us about? What about Tamney? Did you find him? Yes, it took a little extra work to get him heading back toward Northwarden. He promised dutifully he would return, and I believe he will. We had a long talk. I can see now why Rufa values you so much. I personally wouldn't have believed it possible, but as things stand, we still have a long road to hoe, as they say. A goblin company of archers has already entered into the pass and is trying to entrench itself there. If they get a foothold, they may be impossible to root out once the moredhel roll in. We need to find out what their deployment is going to be when the battle begins. Okay, so we grab their leader and give him the hot poker treatment in the dungeons under Northwarden. Tell us where to find him and he's yours. No good. As soon as they discover he's missing, they'll change their tactics. No, what I need is the big plan. I'd be willing to bet that it's in Raglum. How many scouts has the Baron lent you? I've got about 20 men out at the moment. Why? Well, then you won't miss the three of us. We're going to go to Raglum and find a way to get that plan for you. You plan to march through a company of goblin archers to the city where the moredhel are massing, walk right up to the leader of their enemy and say, "Excuse me, may I just borrow your war plans, please?" As I recall, I snuck the future Duke of Crydee, Prince of Princess, and the Admiral of the Western Fleet out of Krondor while it was under the siege of Jocko Radburn and Guy du Bostira. I think I can snatch a silly piece of paper. Yeah, James had some help with that. He was but one of several members of the Thieves Guild who were involved in that. But, fair point, they did still manage to do it. I think if Prince Rufa didn't want to make you Duke of Krondor someday, he'd probably have you killed as a madman. All right, then, get me that paper, but be careful. I'll be waiting for you. All right, so wait through the night. Save our game here, and we head northward to meet the goblins. Although I think we'll run into one more combat before we get to that point. Yeah. James counted. Although he beat tremendous odds on his various adventures, he knew the sheer number of opponents could easily overwhelm them. We won't be able to get by these fellows, take out these fellows. We can try another tactic to get by them. Well, that's our group then. A band of goblins milled in the roadway. James stared hard at the leader of the goblin band that faced them. At his side, Locklear counted heads, silently calculating the combined worth of the mercenary force. "What do you think, Locklear?" James muttered. "Whatever Delicom's game is, he's paying for it," Locklear replied grimly. "Goblin mercenaries charge small fortunes for their services, but by my guess there's at least 1,000 sovereigns worth of them here. I don't think they might attack us unless they think we're getting too close. We might be able to negotiate a passage price." "Pah!" Patra spat. "Dark brothers are dark brothers. You're just mean-spirited, period." Stepping out of the ranks of the enemy, a tall, pale-complected goblin drew his sword and pointed at James. Speaking the kingdom tongue with some difficulty, he glared at them with black eyes. "You speak price of passage," he said. "Dirkin hear you speaking, and tell you to Gullah. Gullah considers a price of passing as being thousands of 2 sovereigns." "Thousands of 2? James repeated. "You mean 2,000 sovereigns?" Gullah nodded. "If you pay, we shall let you pass. If you come closer, you not pay, we kill you. You give us thousands of 2? 2,000 gold, the price of about 1.5 diamonds, to buy off the goblin mercenaries." James produced the required amount. Throwing at the feet of the goblin, he waited for it to be collected by the scrambling mercenaries. "You promised passage," James said. "Yes," the goblin replied. "We not fight, nor shall any of our company you meet. Tell them you pay your way at Gullah's command. We will fight for your baron." As the goblin leader moved away, Locklear chuckled as he whispered in James's ear. "Imagine the look on Baron Gabbett's face when that lot marches up to the Northward and announces they're fighting on his side. He'll have a fit." James smiled. "Too bad we won't be there to see it." Goblins halted them. "Gullah said we could pass," James said, shouting out to the waiting band. "You have a new contract with us." Bewildered, the goblin hordes argued amongst themselves, the leader at last shouting for silence. "You pass," he shouted back. "If Gullah say we obey, you will not be harmed." Well, before we go any further north, I'm going to go ahead and, get stopped again. We're going to go ahead and back to Northward and sell this gear off. report in to Baron Gabbett. We found Tamney as you requested. He told us he will be returning here as quickly as possible. I appreciate your efforts, but I have other matters to concern me at the moment. I still do not like the look of this battle. Is there anything you need from me? Well, no. When I first saw you, it occurred to me to ask something, but whatever it was has utterly slipped my mind at the moment. But bother you, I'll come back and ask you about later. We have a few things we need to be attending to elsewhere. Go on, then. I have a few things to do myself. You are most gracious. Thanks and farewell. All right, so let's see. Shop. There we go. And because keeping him armored is tricky. Alright. So, now that we've got that done, we'll go ahead and head northward again. And yeah, we'll keep getting this message a few times as we head northward. The wind howled. Eyeing the gap, which was the mouth of Northwarden Pass, James turned to Lachlan and clapped him on the back. So, how about a little fun, old friend? You know, I've lost friends every time I've gone into the Northlands, Lachlan replied coldly. Bronwyn, Captain Moyet? James nodded. Sounds to me like you've got something to pay them back for, then. What do you say we go stir up trouble with Delacon's troops up in the Northlands? They marched in silence. Fearing that the sound of their kingdom speech would carry in the cold, they moved as quietly as possible through the treacherous Northwarden Pass, each steeling themselves for the difficulties that lay ahead as they surveyed the snow-covered landscape. And we're back in the frozen land, and well, I thought there was an attack right ahead of us, and curiosity overcame him. Peeling back the thick hide which covered the frame, James chanced to look inside, and hello. Rations and elven bows, which are better than well, kingdom bows, even with the racial difference. It was a siege engine, roughly large enough to protect 3 men. The engine had been covered with a thick hide which had been stripped of all its fur. Narrow slits cut near the top of the tower allow archers to fire at oncoming opponents. And more bows. And more rations. And looks like we got a giant. The enemy jumped back. So you've got a rogue spellcaster, and I believe, well, I forget what type of giant this is. But we'll have Locklear take out the mage. They did leave Patris alone, so I think I'll take this opportunity to show off one of the new magic items we got. You know, we've used the Horn of Algon Kaloon before. The heart here lets us summon Rusalki, which we had a spell of Owen that does the same thing. What I want to show off is the Infinity Pool. A bloody rayed ball of energy rose from the pendant, every inches from the end of Patris's nose, as if awaiting a command. Unsure how he understood its intent, but nevertheless understanding, Patris concentrated his thoughts on the deadliest spells he could remember. So now I have to pick a deadly spell. We'll go ahead and do Evil Seek, cast it on this giant over here. And what the Infinity Pool does is it will increase half again the damage caused by any spell that deals damage. Which makes it incredibly useful in these fights where you have to fight multiple spellcasters and take out a bunch of people very quickly. And tons of rations on these giants. And it seems that that one enveloped the body of the other one. And you figure, you know, if I hadn't built the team up so well, those would actually be rather impressive stocks. Here we go, and a Fetters of Rhyme pouch for Patras. Witch Hag in the distance. The enemy was not surprised. Okay, well, hopefully we can take out the spellcasters first. Okay, well, the good news is that Fireball spell hurt their people as well. Actually, on second thought, this seems an ideal time to try and use an Evil Seek. Unfortunately, I can't target one of the witches, but got her, got her. Very useful thing, Infinity Pools, although it does seem that Locklear got poisoned and all that. Let's see, poisoned rations, elven corals, which there was trouble ahead. Unable to pinpoint the source of his anxiety immediately, James motioned for a halt. Be wary, we may have wandered into a trap. Well, no maybe about it. Alright, but this one looks fairly simple. Well, we'll go ahead and let everybody else rest up first. That's the one nice thing about these traps. If you wander into them while wounded, you can fix your party up pretty well. Okay, so we'll have Locklear push that one, which should block off that cannon. And now Locklear should be able to run. And that trap will block the cannon, so boom. Locklear gaped in wonderment at the heavy wooden catapult. They walked around the weapon and studied it from every angle, spending extra time looking at the firing and trigger mechanisms. On the whole, it appeared to be in good condition, though one of the torsion gears had broken. Moredhel must have built this toad-throwing toy to annoy the Baron. They'd never get it up the pass for old Grumpbucket shot him down. Perhaps, but it's of no use to them at the moment, unless someone fixed it in order to lob stones at Raglan. Now that's peculiar, now that you mention it. Tell me, Lockie, if you were just going to leave something like this lying around in a field, even if you didn't have it working, would you leave it pointed at your home? What are you getting at? The only reason this thing won't function is because one of the torsion gears is broken, not something all that complicated to fix. Now suppose the gear didn't break of its own accord. Gorath told me the men of the Moredhel clans had reservations about fighting under the old battle covers of Myrmadamus. Now, if you were one of those clans and wanted a backup plan in case you wanted to back out of the strike, it would simply be a matter of installing a replacement gear and pulling the release lever. It even has a payload in the basket. Of course, assuming we could find the part ourselves, we could stir up some trouble, maybe even find a way to get the plans Duke Martin needs in the confusion. Perhaps, but we'll need to find a replacement catapult part first, and I doubt there's one lying around somewhere, but let's check around. They searched the area for a half-hour, hoping to discover a replacement part for the broken gear. When it didn't materialize, they picked up their packs and prepared to leave. Yeah, of course, we are not going to find this part just sitting on the road. And we are just coming upon the town of Raglan itself, and this is where we will go ahead and close this chapter out. And next time, we will go wander into the city and look for that catapult part. We'll see you next time.